Welcome back. Let's read this again. I did read it like 1 year ago, but now I read it again.
Kangaroo route. The kangaroo route is a term coined by Qantas, referring to the commercial passenger air routes flown between Australia and the United Kingdom via the Eastern Hemisphere. The route has been operated since 1934, but found its name in 1944 from the unique mode of travel of the kangaroo, as the route's hops were reminiscent of a kangaroo's hops, both used to cover long distances. The term is trademarked and traditionally used by Qantas, although it is often used in the media and by airline competitors to describe all Australia to United Kingdom flights. In addition to Qantas, by 2003, over 20 airlines operated routes connecting Australia and the UK, including British Airways, Cathay Pacific, Emirates, Etihad, Malaysia Airlines, Qatar Airways, Singapore Airlines, Thai Airways and Turkish Airlines, with most involving a single transfer between flights at their respective hubs. Only British Airways and Qantas offer through direct flights, not requiring passengers to change plane en route, both making a fuel stop at Singapore Changi Airport as of 2024. Qantas commenced operating non-stop flights from Perth to London with Boeing 787s on the 25th of March, 2018. This ended the era of the continents of Europe and Oceania not being connected by non-stop flights, marking the first time that all of the world's continents, excluding Antarctica, are connected by non-stop flights. Origins of the name, edit. Qantas operated the Australian part of the kangaroo route for 9 years before coining, and later trademarking, the name. After starting airmail operations between Brisbane and Singapore in 1934, Qantas began operating passenger flights connecting Brisbane to Singapore in 1935 following successful awarding of the Australian government's tender. After disruption to the route due to the emerging hostilities of World War II, the connectivity was famously restored by Qantas with its double sunrise service connectivity between Perth and Ceylon on the Indian Ocean route with Catalina flying boats in 1943. With the addition of the land-based Liberator aircraft to the route in 1944, the Indian Ocean route was officially renamed the Kangaroo service by Qantas Managing Director Hudson Fysh and pilot Bill Crowther, a play on words of the aviation term hop, referring to a leg of a route, and the hop of a kangaroo, an Australian icon. Along with the newly created Qantas logo of the flying kangaroo, the terms kangaroo service and kangaroo route were trademarked by Qantas and became the airline's branded term to describe Qantas Australia-United Kingdom connectivity. A significant milestone in 1947 when Qantas began operating the entire kangaroo route independently. This April 1947 inauguration is referred to as the birth date of the kangaroo route by Qantas, even though it had been operating a part of that route for almost a decade. History, edit. Early years, 1935-1940, edit. In 1935 Qantas started flying passengers to Singapore in a de Havilland 86 to connect with London-bound Imperial Airways. London to Brisbane service commenced on the 13th of April, 1935. Imperial Airways and Qantas Empire Airways opened the 12,754-mile, 20,526 kilometers, London to Brisbane route for passengers for a single fare £195, equivalent to $21,300 in 2022. There were no through bookings on the first service because of heavy sector bookings, but there were 2 through passengers on the next flight that left London on the 20th of April. The route opened for passengers from Brisbane to London on the 17th of April, flights were weekly and the journey time was 1212 days. Eastbound passengers from London would first fly from Croydon to Paris, take an overnight train to Brindisi, and fly onward with stops at Athens, Alexandria, overnight, Gaza, Baghdad, overnight, Basra, Kuwait, Bahrain, Sharjah, overnight, Gwadar, Karachi, Jodhpur, overnight, Delhi, Kanpur, Allahabad, Calcutta, overnight, Akyab, Rangoon, Bangkok, overnight, Alastar, Singapore, overnight, Batavia, Saudi Arabia, Rambang, overnight, Koeppen, Darwin, overnight, Longgrech, overnight, and Charleville. London Karachi was operated by Imperial Airways, Karachi Singapore jointly by Imperial and Indian Transcontinental Airways, and Singapore Brisbane by Qantas. Wartime Modified Operations, 1940-1946, edit. Impediment and interruption due to World War II, June, 1940-February, 1942, edit. On the 11th of June, 1940, Italy entered World War II and the Kangaroo route connection across the Mediterranean Sea from Egypt was severed with the resulting loss of all access to commercial air routes. While direct passenger air connectivity was lost, previous contingency plans were put into action, utilizing the structure of the horseshoe route that connected Australia and England for passengers and airmail via Durban, South Africa, where passengers would connect to steamboat service. This service was swiftly started just 8 days later with the first flight leaving Australia on the 19th of June, 1940 and continuing its operation, modifying as necessary until its final Reserve Route 3, via Broome was lost on the 15th of February, 1942 with the fall of Singapore. Plans for restoration of the connectivity were started in early 1943, resulting in the ideation, equipping, and successful testing of what would become the Double Sunrise service. Earlier in 1939 an alternative route via the Indian Ocean was proposed and designed by the Australian government for potential use in case of emergency. The designed route was Port Hedland, Batavia, Christmas Island, Cocos Island, Diego Garcia, the Seychelles, Mombasa. This route was surveyed and tested in June 1939 but would ultimately not be used, in part as Batavia had already fallen in March 1942 in the Battle of Java, 1942. Innovation and resumption via the Double Sunrise, July 1943 July 1945, edit. See also, the Double Sunrise. On the 29th of July 1943, Qantas resumed the Kangaroo route's modified operation, using a fleet of 5 consolidated PBY Catalina aircraft to cross the Indian Ocean non-stop. The planned route was 4 flights between Crawley, Western Australia, and RAF Base Koggala in southern Ceylon. Designed to exploit the Catalina's extreme flight range, the flights became the longest non-stop commercial air route, covering over 3,500 nautical miles, 6,500 kilometers, 4,000 miles, across the Indian Ocean. Navigated without the aid of radio, the crews relied solely on rudimentary navigation by compass and stars during the trip, taking between 27 and 33 hours, with departure timed so that the flight crossed Japanese-occupied territory during darkness. The crew and passengers would observe the sunrise twice, which led to the service being known as the Double Sunrise. The Double Sunrise flights remain the longest, in terms of airtime, commercial flights in history. Initially, passengers and mail were then transferred via ground transport from Galle to Karachi, connecting with bulk service onwards to London. In November 1943, this was replaced by adding an additional hop to the Kangaroo route operated by the Qantas Catalinas up the Indian coast to Karanjai Creek in Karachi. In June 1944, Qantas augmented the Kangaroo route's Catalina service with an additional route operated by converted Consolidated Liberator bombers. The Liberators flew from Perth to Learmonth before flying a shorter 3,077 mi, 4,952 kilometers, over water route to an airfield northeast of Colombo, but they could make the journey in 17 hours with 5,500 pounds, 2,500 kilograms, of payload, whereas the Catalinas usually required at least 27 hours and their payload was limited to only 1,000 pounds, 450 kilograms. This route was named the Kangaroo service and was the genesis for the Kangaroo route's naming. It also marked the first time that Qantas' now famous Kangaroo logo was used. Passengers received a certificate proclaiming them as members of the Order of the Longest Hop. In June 1945, Avro Lancastrians were introduced on the England-Australia service, and the Liberators and Catalinas were soon shifted to other Qantas routes. The Catalina-operated double sunrise service ended on the 18th of July 1945. Route normalization, Western Legs, May 1945, edit. On the 30th of May 1945, following the end of the war in the European theatre, Lancastrian-operated flights by Bawk resumed from Herne Airport in southern England, connecting in Karachi to Qantas-operated service which flew via Karachi, Minaria, Ceylon, Learmonth to Sydney, covering the Kangaroo route in a scheduled time of 70 hours. Route normalization, Eastern Legs, April 1946, edit. On the 7th of April 1946, Qantas ended its Indian Ocean service, and reverted the Kangaroo route back via Darwin and Singapore. For the first time flying directly from Sydney to Darwin to Singapore, eliminating all previous domestic Australian stops. Bawk and Qantas service combined to operate the Kangaroo route from Sydney to London time in a new record of 63 hours. Multiple stops, 1947-1973, edit. In 1947, Qantas took over complete operation of the route from Australia to the United Kingdom utilising their new Lockheed Constellations. Bawk would continue to run its own service in parallel. Qantas first flew the Kangaroo route on the 1st of December 1947. A Lockheed Constellation carried 29 passengers and 11 crew from Sydney to London with stops in Darwin, Singapore, Calcutta, Karachi, Cairo, and Tripoli. Passengers stayed overnight in Singapore and Cairo. A return fare was £585, equivalent to $44,700 in 2022, equivalent to 130 weeks average pay. In the 1950s and 1960s some Qantas Kangaroo routes featured other stops, including Frankfurt, Zurich, Rome, Athens, Beirut, Tehran, Bombay, and Colombo. In May 1958 the Kangaroo route had 11 westward flights a week, 4 Qantas Super Constellations, 4 Bawk Britannias, and 1 Air India Super Constellation from Sydney to London, 1 KLM Super Constellation Sydney to Amsterdam, and 1 Thai Douglas DC-6B Auckland to Paris. In February 1959 Qantas' fastest Super Constellation took 63 hours 45 minutes Sydney to Heathrow and Bawk's Britannia took 49 hours 25 minutes. Jet flights, Qantas with Boeing 707, started in 1959. In April 1960 the fastest trip from Sydney to London was 34 hours 30 minutes with 8 stops. In the late 1950s, Qantas had a round-the-world network, flying Australia to Europe westward on the Kangaroo route and eastward on the Southern Cross route, via the Pacific Ocean. In 1964 Qantas started a third route to London via Tahiti, Mexico, and the Caribbean, called the Fiesta route. Qantas dropped its Southern Cross route and Fiesta route in 1975. By 1969, Qantas had 11 Kangaroo route flights a week from Sydney to London, taking 29-32 hours with 5-6 stops each. Borg's 7 to 9 weekly flights previously had 7 stops. In 1971, Qantas added Boeing 747s, reducing the travel time and number of stops. In the late 1970s, flights typically stopped at Singapore and Bahrain. Fares fell, opening air travel to more people with more competition. One-stop flights, 1974-2018, edit. In April 1974, Qantas commenced operating a one-stop service from Perth to London with only one stop in Bombay with Boeing 707s. In 1989, Qantas set a world distance record for commercial jets when a Boeing 747-400, the city of Canberra, VHOJA, flew non-stop from London to Sydney in just over 20 hours, with special fuel and without passengers or cargo. This was the only non-stop flight ever made between both cities for the next 3 decades. Starting in January 2009, Qantas began utilizing its newer 380 aircraft on the Kangaroo route, raising its capacity to 450 passengers per flight. As part of a partnership approved in 2013 with Emirates, Qantas announced that its services to London would stop in Dubai rather than Singapore, beginning that same year. Qantas also announced that its services to Frankfurt via Singapore would be discontinued in April 2013, leaving London as its only European destination. Following years of low demand on the Sydney-Dubai route, Qantas announced in 2017 that its flights between Sydney and London would be reverting to a Singapore stop instead of Dubai from the 25th of March 2018. Non-stop flights, 2018, edit. Non-stop flights from Perth to London commenced in March 2018 with Boeing 787s, with the Kangaroo route becoming a non-stop route for the first time, while also connecting Australia and Europe via a non-stop route for the first time. These flights operate out of Perth's Terminal 3 rather than the traditional T1 in order to facilitate seamless transfers from Qantas domestic flights. The non-stop service forms part of Qantas' secondary Kangaroo route QF9/10, between Melbourne and London via Perth. The route also opens up the possibility of further direct flights to Europe from Perth such as Paris and Frankfurt. In June 2022, Qantas launched a non-stop seasonal service from Perth to Rome. In late March 2020, prior to Qantas cutting all international services due to the COVID-19 pandemic, several repatriation flights were operated with a routing of Sydney-Darwin-London. The Singaporean government had banned transit passengers and airspace in the Middle East was closed due to the pandemic. This was the first time an Airbus A380 flew non-stop between Australia and Europe. In November 2021, Qantas resumed non-stop Kangaroo route flights, this time from Darwin to London before resuming the non-stop route between Perth and London in May 2022 following the reopening of Western Australia for international travel. Qantas' evolution of the Kangaroo route, edit. Since its founding in 1935, Qantas has evolved the Kangaroo route over time in terms of hops, routings, duration, and aircraft used. Illustrated in the below table are snapshots of that ongoing evolution over the years. Year, number of stops, total duration, route, from via to, aircraft and operator, passengers. 1935-38 12.5 days Brisbane. Stops 1 to 17 operated by Qantas Empire Airways. Stops 18 to 27 operated by Indian Transcontinental Airways. Stops 28 to 38 operated by Imperial Airways. Croydon, then train to London. De Havilland 86, Qantas Empire Airways. Armstrong Whitworth Atalanta, Indian Transcontinental Airways. Handley Page H.P.42 Hannibal, Imperial Airways. Handley Page H.P.45 Heracles, Imperial Airways. 9. 1937 41 12.5 days Brisbane. Stops 1 to 18 operated by Qantas Empire Airways. Stops 19 to 28 operated by Indian Transcontinental Airways. Stops 29 to 41 operated by Imperial Airways. Southampton, England, then train to London. De Havilland 86, Qantas Empire Airways. Armstrong Whitworth Atalanta, Indian Transcontinental Airways. Handley Page H.P.42 Hannibal, Imperial Airways. Handley Page H.P.45 Heracles, Imperial Airways. 9. 1938-35 9 days 20 hours Sydney. Stops 1 to 12 operated by Qantas Empire Airways. Stops 13 to 35 operated by Imperial Airways. Southampton, England, then train to London. Short S-23 Class Empire Flying Boat, Qantas Empire Airways. Short S-23 Class Empire Flying Boat, Imperial Airways. 15. 1947 6 3 days 20 hours Sydney. 1 Darwin. 2 Singapore. 3 Calcutta, Kolkata. 4 Karachi. 5 Cairo. 6 Tripoli. London. Lockheed Constellation 29. 1955 8 3 days 6 hours Sydney. 1 Darwin. 2 Jakarta. 3 Singapore. 4 Bangkok. 5 Calcutta, Kolkata. 6 Karachi. 7 Cairo. 8 Rome. London. Lockheed L-1049 Super Constellation 57. 1959 8 38 hours Sydney. 1 Darwin. 2 Singapore. 3 Bangkok. 4 Calcutta, Kolkata. 5 Karachi. 6 Bahrain. 7 Cairo. 8 Rome. London. Boeing 707 to 138 120. 1965 5:30 hours Sydney. 1 Singapore. 2 Calcutta, Kolkata. 3 Karachi. 4 Cairo. 5 Rome. London. Boeing 707 to 320 220. 1971 2:26 hours Sydney. 1 Singapore. 2 Bahrain. London. Boeing 747-200 B356. 1977 1:23 hours Perth. 1 Bombay, Mumbai. London. Boeing 747-200 B436. 1991 24 hours Sydney. 1 Singapore. London. Boeing 747 to 400 412. 2013 1:23 hours 30 minutes Sydney. 1 Dubai, aka the Falcon route. London. Airbus A380-800 484. 2018 017 hours 20 minutes Perth. London. Boeing 787 to 9 236. 2026 020 hours, estimated Sydney, London. Airbus A350-1238. Note, carriage duration is total elapsed travel time westbound, including stops. Other competing Australia to United Kingdom one-stop flights, edit. While the Kangaroo route trademark symbol is a trademarked term belonging to Qantas, it is often genericized by the media, other operators, and even Qantas themselves to refer to all flights between Australia and the United Kingdom. Today Qantas remains the sole operator of the Kangaroo route as well as the only non-stop flight between Australia and the United Kingdom. British Airways continues to operate its legacy route it has served since 1935 when it was Imperial Airways, offering the only other direct flight from Australia to the United Kingdom. Forming a competitive market, there are over 20 airlines operating competing one-stop flights from Australia to the United Kingdom via the Eastern Hemisphere as seen in the table below. Table of other competing one-stop Australia-United Kingdom flights. Origin in Australia Airline Intermediate Stop / Transit Hub Destination in United Kingdom. Adelaide Qatar Airways Doha Birmingham. Edinburgh. London Gatwick. Cathay Pacific Hong Kong London Heathrow. Malaysia Airlines Kuala Lumpur. Qantas Perth. Qatar Airways Doha. Singapore Airlines Singapore. Cathay Pacific Hong Kong Manchester. Qatar Airways Doha. Singapore Airlines Singapore. Brisbane Qatar Airways Doha Birmingham. Emirates Dubai International. Qatar Airways Doha Edinburgh. Emirates Dubai International Glasgow. China Eastern Shanghai Pudong London Gatwick. Emirates Dubai International. Qatar Airways Doha. Cathay Pacific Hong Kong London Heathrow. China Airlines Taipei Taoyuan. China Eastern Shanghai Pudong. China Southern Guangzhou. Emirates Dubai International. Korean Air Seoul Incheon. Malaysia Airlines Kuala Lumpur. Qantas Perth. Singapore. Qatar Airways Doha. Singapore Airlines Singapore. Emirates Dubai International London Stansted. Cathay Pacific Hong Kong Manchester. Emirates Dubai International. Qatar Airways Doha. Singapore Airlines Singapore. Emirates Dubai International Newcastle. Cairns Qantas Perth London Heathrow. Singapore Airlines Singapore. Singapore Airlines Manchester. Canberra Qantas Perth London Heathrow. Darwin Qantas Perth London Heathrow. Qantas Singapore. Singapore Airlines Manchester. Melbourne Air India New Delhi Birmingham. Qatar Airways Doha. Emirates Dubai International. Qatar Airways Doha Edinburgh. Emirates Dubai International Glasgow. China Eastern Shanghai Pudong London Gatwick. Emirates Dubai International. Qatar Airways Doha. Air China Beijing Capital London Heathrow. Air India Mumbai. New Delhi. Asiana Airlines Seoul Incheon. Beijing Capital Airlines Qingdao. Cathay Pacific Hong Kong. China Airlines Taipei Taoyuan. China Eastern Shanghai Pudong. China Southern Guangzhou. Emirates Dubai International. Etihad Airways Abu Dhabi. Malaysia Airlines Kuala Lumpur. Qantas Perth. Singapore. Qatar Airways Doha. Royal Brunei Airlines Brunei. Singapore Airlines Singapore. Sri Lankan Airlines Colombo. Thai Airways Bangkok Suvarnabhumi. Vietnam Airlines Ho Chi Minh City. Hanoi. Emirates Dubai International London Stansted. Cathay Pacific Hong Kong Manchester. Emirates Dubai International. Etihad Airways Abu Dhabi, Qatar Airways Doha, Singapore Airlines Singapore, Emirates Dubai International Newcastle, Perth Emirates Dubai International Birmingham, Qatar Airways Doha, Qatar Airways Edinburgh, Emirates Dubai International Glasgow, Emirates London Gatwick, Qatar Airways Doha, Air Mauritius